Chase and the Willow situation and who is responsible for what. Let us start with Chase, because the fan conversation around the storyline is genuinely interesting in the way that fan conversations are interesting when they reveal something true about how differently people are seeing the same situation. The positions being taken in the comment sections break down along fairly predictable lines. The most sympathetic read on Chase is that he is a genuinely uncomplicated person in an increasingly complicated situation, that he went out for a run on property he lives on, came back without a shirt because he had been exercising, and encountered Willow in a circumstance that he had absolutely no reason to anticipate. He is not conniving. He does not have a strong radar for manipulation because he does not think in those terms himself. His baseline assumption is that people mean what they say and are doing what they appear to be doing. The less sympathetic read is that Chase is a married person in this situation, and regardless of his intentions, his body language and his openness to conversation with Willow are doing things that he has some responsibility for managing. That a man who understands he has a complicated history with his wife's most threatening rival living on the same property should be operating with more deliberate awareness of how his interactions with that person read. Both of these reads contain truth. The combination of them is where the actual character lives. Chase is genuinely not manipulative. He does not engineer situations. He does not calculate his moves in the way that Willow or Tracy or Michael calculate theirs. That is a real quality, and it is part of what makes him a good person. But good people still have responsibilities around the signals they are sending, and the specific signal of being warm and approachable and open to conversation with Willow, given everything Brooklyn knows and fears, and has built the vow of her cold declaration around, is not a neutral signal even if Chase does not intend it as anything. The fan who noted that Brooklyn's radar is better than Chase's is correct. Brooklyn has been tracking Willow's behavior and Willow's intentions all summer with the specific attention of someone who understands exactly what she is dealing with. She is not being paranoid. She is being accurate. And her accuracy is going to require her to have conversations with Chase about what appropriate distance looks like in this particular situation that Chase may not fully understand the urgency of. Willow coming to Chase and asking him to be allies is the specific move that fan reactions noted as inappropriate regardless of her framing of it. Not because friendship between exes is inherently wrong, but because the custody situation, the blackmail, the specific dynamics of everything happening between Willow and Michael mean that Chase being close to Willow compromises his position and creates genuine problems for his marriage. Willow knows this. Willow understanding that Chase is her best potential access point to sympathy and proximity is not a theory about her. It is an observable fact about how she has operated across her entire history with him. Chase needs to hold the line. Not cruelly, not with dramatic declarations about how he can never speak to her again, but with the kind of clear and specific behavior that says his priority is his marriage and his family, and that the best thing he can do for everyone is maintain boundaries that are clean enough that Brooklyn never has to wonder what is happening. Whether he does this, whether the history between them and Willow's considerable skill at positioning herself as someone who needs him create a situation where the line becomes blurry, is the question the fall is going to answer. And the fan community, divided as it is about who bears the most responsibility, is going to be watching every interaction very closely. Jordan's promise and the reasons it might not hold. Now let us talk about Jordan, because this storyline is being built with a slow, honest patience that deserves its own careful examination. Jordan made Curtis a promise. She told him she would wait. That promise was made in the specific emotional context of watching the man she loves be taken away for 10 years in a verdict she did not want and did not expect, with the hope of parole in 2 years as the closest version of comfort available. She meant the promise. She said it with full intention. But intentions exist in the context of daily life, and daily life for Jordan right now is genuinely difficult. Curtis is gone. The reunion she had been building toward, the reconnection after everything complicated their relationship, the specific hope that they might finally have the chapter they had been trying to have, has been ripped away by a sentence handed down by a jury that saw things differently than everyone who loves Curtis needed them to. Loneliness is not a character flaw. It is a human reality that arrives whether you plan for it or not. And the specific loneliness of someone who made a commitment to wait, who is surrounded by people going home to partners, who is the ghost of what her life was supposed to look like present in every quiet evening, that loneliness is real, and it is going to press against the promise she made in ways that the emotional intensity of that courtroom moment did not fully prepare her for. Isaiah is the complication. Not because he is a bad person, he is not a bad person, but because he is present and complicated and someone Jordan has genuine history with. Before Curtis came back into focus, before the crash and the trial and everything that followed, there was something between Jordan and Isaiah that was real. It was interrupted rather than resolved. And interrupted feelings have a way of resurfacing when the circumstances shift enough to make them available again. The crash secret is what makes the Isaiah situation specifically complicated rather than simply difficult. Right now, Jordan's understanding of the Isaiah situation includes a version where Curtis, while wrong to attack him physically, had reason to be angry, because the story Curtis believed about that night on the road, the story about Isaiah leaving them to die, created a framework for the conflict that made Jordan's sympathy for Curtis feel like the only appropriate response. When Brooklyn's role in the crash comes out, when the truth surfaces that it was Brooklyn who left the scene, that the car Jordan and Curtis were in went off the road without any deliberate abandonment by Isaiah, everything Jordan thinks she knows about why Curtis attacked Isaiah changes. Isaiah's anger at Curtis was never about pettiness or professional rivalry. He was publicly accused and privately attacked for something he did not do. He lost the full use of his hand over a lie that Curtis built into a conviction. Jordan absorbing that truth is Jordan having to completely reconstitute her understanding of the last several months. The guilt that comes with that reconstitution, the specific guilt of having doubted Isaiah when the evidence always pointed toward him being innocent, is going to change how she sees him. Sympathy, where there was complicated ambivalence. Validation, where there was uncertainty. The specific emotional shift that comes when you realize someone was right and you were wrong, and they paid a real price for you being wrong. That shift, in proximity with old chemistry, in the specific vulnerability of loneliness and guilt, is a combustible combination. Not inevitable. Jordan has integrity and she has made a promise, and those things matter to her. But the conditions for the promise to fail have been assembled with care by the story the show has been telling, and the weight of all of them pressing at once is a real test of what the promise is actually made of. Martin is still working on Curtis's appeal. The show has been clear about that door being open even if not optimistic about it succeeding quickly. Curtis walking free sooner than expected, the appeal producing results that nobody fully anticipated, would be the intervention that stops the Jordan-Isaiah situation before it crosses the line it is approaching. Or it would arrive as the worst possible timing if Jordan has already crossed that line by the time Curtis gets out. Either version is dramatically resonant, and the show has built both of them as genuine possibilities. The crash secret and the reckoning that changes everything. And finally, let us look at the crash secret that is still waiting beneath everything else, because it is not simply a plot point that affects the legal situation around Curtis. It is a moral reckoning that touches every relationship in the orbit of everyone who knows about it or who has been living with the consequences of not knowing. Brooklyn has been carrying this for months. Tracy has been the persistent voice arguing against disclosure. Chase has been doing his job honestly, digging into the crash, without knowing that the answer to what he is looking for lives in his own house. And the guilt that has been eating at Brooklyn has found partial expression in her heroic act of stopping Willow from driving the kids while impaired, the parallel story of a driver leaving the scene being answered by a different driver choosing not to leave a different scene. But that partial expression is not resolution. The confession that has been almost happening all summer is still waiting for its moment. And the circumstances that make that moment most likely to finally arrive are exactly the ones that are now present. Chase getting closer to the truth through his investigation. The trial having produced its verdict. The Jordan-Isaiah dynamic beginning to shift in ways that make the crash's actual cause newly relevant. When the truth surfaces, and in Port Charles it always surfaces, the specific people most affected are the ones with the most at stake. Jordan, who has been operating on a false understanding of why Curtis attacked Isaiah. Curtis, whose reputation took the hit of a guilty verdict built in part on a narrative around that night that was never fully accurate. Isaiah, who bore the professional and physical consequences of Curtis's attack over something he did not do. Chase, who has been investigating without understanding he is investigating something connected to the woman he married.